Let us resume for this last afternoon. Can we please close the doors? So we're resuming the afternoon with a session on the shipping market. For those of you that know me, I'm really well organized, so I wanted to take a closer look on what shipping means. And the internet told me that the shipping market corresponded to all activities in the maritime transportation, so quite some program. François Cadieux, you're very welcome. You're currently an advisor and managing director of BRS Paris. So the top broker in France. You just have 20 minutes to speak to us about the shipping market. Quite some challenge, so hopefully you'll be up for it. Sir, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I wanted to first of all extend my thanks to Mathieu Doman for inviting me today. I am a European citizen, as most of you here in this room today. And I may shock you, but I do not have much admiration for the new President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. But I'm also a player in the maritime market. And in this respect, Donald Trump has done something remarkable in 2025. He put back at the core of the agenda maritime transportation and naval construction. The world discovered or rediscovered how geopolitically and geostrategic shipping is, to the extent that the President of the United States now wishes that its country will be a new maritime power and a new top leading country in naval construction. And doing this is no walk in the park. When you take a look at the evolution of market shares in the key naval construction countries, you realize that indeed, between 1990 and 2025, so a long period of time, Japan and Europe were leaders, and then they declined, and in 2025, Japan went from a market share of 39% to 15% for Europe, 32% to barely a few. And during that period of time, South Korea significantly increased in the 1990s, 2000s, stabilized in the 2010s, and they're now losing ground to China. China now has a market share of 60% versus 5% a few years ago. So in terms of the percentage of the ships built and delivered in China. Being a manufacturer is not easy. Prices are low. So a VCC, you could have bought that in South Korea for various hundreds of billions of dollars, and now it's barely 100. So in 34 years of time, nothing much has happened. But in the meantime, many regulations were adopted. The average weight of ships has increased by a few tons. So being a manufacturer is quite challenging, highly cyclical, very complex. And towards the end of the year 2008, you all remember the financial crisis that hit with the Lehman crisis, and that led to a shipping crisis. Many cancellations, around 2,800 ships were cancelled, representing 165,000 tons in the consequences of this are the following. Following this financial crisis and shipping crisis, well, many construction sites went bankrupt, and half of construction sites around the world closed shop. So, 60% of ships delivered today are Chinese or 60% of the ships currently being ordered. And in these orders, you have close to 70% being ordered in China. There has been tremendous consolidation on the market. The top 10 naval construction groups account for more than 70% of total orders, including 7 Chinese, 2 Koreans, 1 Japanese, no Americans, no Europeans. We tried to look a little further in that analysis of relevant criteria, allowing a nation to become again a naval power. And these are the top 10 criteria. Labor, of course. It should be cheap enough and in abundance. Huge problem right now in the US, but also in Japan, in Korea, in Europe, to a certain extent in China as well, but more on that later. Equity. You need to invest in lifting. You need to invest in construction sites. You need a flexible supply chain. And yet, naval construction sites have reduced their teams and now base themselves on external subcontractors. You also need a banking system that's solid with a stable currency. In the 1980s, Brazil was supposed to be the new El Dorado for naval construction. Unfortunately, due to their very unstable model, that didn't happen. Also, you need external or internal design capacities, and also you need to be able to handle losses. This is a poor industry that usually loses money. And then you need quality products at a low cost. So when you look at that table, out of 100, China is pretty much ticking all boxes with a general score of 96. Japan, which is the second naval construction power in the world today, has a score of 80. South Korea, 90, slightly better. It's the third power, you might ask why, but I think that there's a bit of a myth around Japanese quality that's currently being debunked, but perhaps we can dedicate another conference to this. Europe, doing quite well, 76, and Vietnam in the US are pretty much on a par with 46%, so have the score. Difficult. Maritime transportation is also about ship owners. So what can we say about that part of the story? Well, the world fleet has grown considerably, as I will explain to you later. But over the past 10 years, between 2014 and 2025, there was a 2-digit growth, 44%. Europe, China, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore all had significant growth. For China, even a 3-digit growth. Europe, 2-digit growth, and Singapore, which is in the Chinese influence zone, had a rather considerable 2-digit growth. Now, what about the market shares? The vision is quite different. Europe, unfortunately, lost market shares. So did Japan, South Korea, the US, as we saw, and Singapore. And China are, on the other end, making progress. Let's now zoom in on Europe, because Europe is a key zone, an area. In absolute terms, in Europe, the fleet has grown. But what about the market shares? What were the key contributing countries? Greece, of course. Scandinavia with Norway and Denmark. France. Thank you, Mr. Rodolphe Sade, for making it possible for France to have a 116% growth. And, strangely enough, Germany and Italy have had a reduced fleet. In the years 2009-2010, there was this wonderful system whereby taxes were lowered, but unfortunately many bankruptcies ensued. In Italy, the situation was quite different. Shipping was based on family businesses, and it's really hard being a ship owner, so many of them did not resist the crisis. Right now in Italy you have Grimaldi, D'Amico, Mr. Apunti, or MSC. I'm never sure whether he's Italian or Swiss, but he has significant economic interests in Italy. So in terms of market shares, Europe, as I said, went from a 39.6 to a 34.1 market share. And apart from Greece and France, the rest of European countries have had declining market shares, unfortunately. Still, when it comes to bulk shipping, we're not doing so bad. With your Oldendorf, Ultra Bulk, Star Bulk, Western Bulk, CMB Tech, Shell, Vitol, Scorpia, Tonka, Mercuria, Frederickson. So large European fleet that we shipping fleet we can all be very proud of. And the with regards to the top 10 of operated fleet containers, well, in the top 3 they're all Europeans. So to summarize, in the main economic areas, the key takeaway is that in the US there are barely any ship owner apart from Carnival Cruise Line, barely any naval construction. In Europe, we have the largest shipping companies in bulk, in shipping and container ships. And also you have your Stolensons, which is the number 1 shipper of chemical products in the world. In PTCCs, you have cars and lorries being shipped by Norway. And there is also naval construction still well alive and kicking. For large ships, the world is finding its supply in Europe. Now, in the extreme Orient area, China is the number 1 naval manufacturer in the world. Korea, top 3 in the world, with an average size in terms of its shipping companies. And in Japan, you have a major naval manufacturer ranking 2nd in the world, and they have a long-standing ship-owning tradition. Let's now take a look at the latest development in the world fleet between 2000 and 2025, or even 2026. The world fleet has grown considerably. In terms of numbers of ships, that has doubled. In tonnage, you can multiply that by 3. That increase reflects quite simply the increase in trade around the world is the result of globalization. In the year 2000, we've gone from 6.5 billion in tonnage of merchandise to 13.5. In the year 2000, China was importing 50 million euros, dollars in iron ore, and now you're looking at more than 1 trillion. So now we have entered a new era characterized by sanctions, conflict, and so ship owners and countries and individuals are supposed to be making a choice. You know, choose your side, pick your side. You're American or Chinese, you're Iranian or Russian. So things are getting more and more complicated for ship owners today. So what's the position of China in all of this? China is accelerating in terms of its expansion. There was a first expansion phase in 2003 and 2008. There were other countries that expanded greatly during that period of time. South Korea, Turkey, Vietnam, India. They all tried to take a market share in naval construction, but since 2022 things are a little different. China has been accelerating since then, and they're creating new construction sites. They're increasing the size of these sites. There are plenty of domestic construction sites which were not under our radar and are now reappearing on the international arena. So China is quite pragmatic. There are various powers in China. You have Beijing, and Beijing is saying, no, that's not exactly an increase. You know, these are older construction sites that we had closed and we're reopening them. And Beijing is not saying that, but, you know, they're saying in between the lines that that's not a problem for you in Europe. There are still plenty of market shares to be conquered in Japan, in Korea, in Europe, and elsewhere. So they're super cool. Provinces have the economic power, and they say our job is to make sure that the province can prosper. The naval construction industry is booming in China. In 2025, the average of wage increases in naval construction in China was 30%. There you go. And so now this is an industry that's very attractive, even for PhD graduates, again. So booming industry. And then you have the manufacturers. They're saying, well, we have orders aplenty up until 2030. And in China, as is the case in the entire world, it's really hard to find any slot before the end of 2029 or the start of 2030. So they're like, okay, we have a great pipeline, we're investing in a new slot, a new construction site. Amortization will happen over just a matter of years, and should there be a problem in the future, we'll just close down these capacities. Now, that problem, it is bound to happen. Why? Because this is cyclical business. At one stage or another, offer will be higher than demand. And as I said, in maritime transportation, naval construction has become a key strategic business. And so whether it be South Korea, Japan, the US, or Europe, people are not looking to give up anytime soon. However, I think that by 2029-30, there will be a new cycle, and that one last cycle will have lasted for 8 years. Not so bad. Let me end on decarbonization. This was the top subject at the center of all discussions before the election of Donald Trump. People kept on talking about, you know, decarbonization, dual fuel propulsion, etc. That's it now. No longer the case. The Americans, they cannot withstand that kind of conversation anymore. They just want to support the oil industry, the gas industry, even the coal industry, mind you. So they have even adopted that so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, otherwise known as OBA, which put an end to most tax credits promoting green energies. And so now it's all about drill, baby, drill. And they're even going further, because the Americans, they never stop at their borders, as you know. And in October of 2025, they did everything in their power for the resolutions on carbon neutrality from 2050 that were pushed forward by the IMO, not to be signed. And quite likely they will not be signed this year. They are against carbon taxes in Europe. And in Europe, the problem is we're not always so united. Greece was never in favor of dual fuel proposals, which is fair enough in a way, because you have GNL, you have methanol, you have ENPG, ammonia, and quite clearly it's not working perfectly well. In ammonia, it's not really stable. LNG is not doing so bad, but still a lot of logistics around it, plus the pricing. So, fuel propulsion is on the agenda yet again. That's all I wanted to say today. Hopefully I made it on time. Thank you very much, Cecile, and thank you very much, everyone.